Hey everybody, today I'm talking through my favourite 25 board games designed by Reiner Knizia. Now Knizia is one of my favourite designers of all time, extremely prolific, so of course I've not had a chance to play every one of his games, but I have played a lot that I like. So I'll go through the top 25 and I'll mention some others as well that I also enjoy. So some of these games are not just on there for the sake of it, I actually do enjoy them all. But before I get started on the games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer. And if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. At number 25, I have Medici. Now this is one of his auction games, and I do love the way that he plays with this idea of having to buy things in lots. So you're not just buying these goods one at a time, sometimes you're buying them even three at a time. And what you're doing in this game is you're trying to climb these tracks based on these individual lots, as well as having the highest numerical value in all of them combined, basically. That matched with the capacity of how many goods you can store at any time, and the way that timing comes into play, because you do want to be making sure that you are acquiring things at a steady pace, but not being too slow, because you can get caught off guard and be left with stuff that you don't necessarily want. So that's Medici at 25. At 24, I have Lord of the Rings, The Confrontation. Now this is Knizia's take on the kind of stratego mechanism where you cannot see your opponent's pieces, but you have to remember them once they collide into your pieces. So of course, it's Lord of the Rings themed. That's one person's the shadow player, one person's the fellowship. You are trying to find Frodo if you are if you're the shadow player, but you're trying to get Frodo to Mordor if you are the fellowship player. And all the different characters have unique abilities. There's some card play as well. Lots of different kind of scenarios that can play out. Extremely tense game. In fact, probably one of the most kind of suspenseful games that I've ever played. That is Lord of the Rings, The Confrontation. At 23, I have Circus Flocati, very simple push your luck style game, flipping cards, trying not to get duplicate suits when you reveal them, but collecting cards based on the values you want to keep in your hand, so higher the better, but also having several of the same colour in the lower colours is great because you can cash them in and get 10 straight up points. At number 22, I have Age of War, silly dice rolling style game, trying to roll a big cluster of dice, get these symbols matching these objective cards, and if you collect all of the cards of a certain type, then you will flip them over and secure them as points. But until that point, those cards can be stolen from you from the other players. So some good back and forth, and that hand in hand with the Yahtzee mechanism is a lot of fun. At number 21, I have The Quest for El Dorado. So a hybrid deck building and racing style game, playing through these cards to traverse all those different terrain type, racing towards the finish. At number 20, I have Modern Art. So an absolute classic auction style game where you are playing these cards, and these cards will determine the auction types. You have kind of like once around auctions, you have blind bids, you have free-for-all style auctions, and what you're doing is you're collecting these artist cards, and based on the popularity, i.e. the number of those cards distributed amongst the players, points will be divvied out accordingly. So if there's a card that's consistently strong, then the points will compound with each other, and you give you bigger rewards as long as you are the majority holder or have some cards of that type. At number 19, I have Witchstone. So one of his more recent, this is a co-design actually. This one uses a cool tile placement mechanism where you are trying to group these particular icons together, and those icons all assigned to a different action on the board, which will let you kind of build up networks or go around this little rondelle. Lots of combos, big, satisfying and growing turns in Witchstone. At number 18, I have Blue Lagoon, a little route building style game, trying to place your little markers on these different islands, trying to reach different islands, have the majority on islands, as well as collecting these different items on the board. A game of two halves, as you can set up these kind of huts in the halfway stage and then spawn off from them in the next round. A very interesting and clean design. At number 17, I have Tigris and Euphrates, or Yellow and Yangtze. I have put these together because they are so similar. Definitely one of his heavier and more involved games, with definitely a high level of conflict as you're placing these tiles on the board, trying to get these kind of temples set up so that you cut generating points of different colours. Then only your lowest value colour of the 4, I believe, is going to be your final score. So you cannot neglect a certain type. You can collide into other people's regions and have a big scrap. A lot of fun. Definitely quite an obtuse style game, but I do enjoy it under the right circumstances. At number 16, I have the Tower of Babel. Definitely an underrated Knizia design with some real unique identity in my opinion, as you are competing for majorities in terms of building these world wonders, but you are also basically giving points out on players if you reject their offers to contribute towards those different wonders. So each round you're putting cards up, and if every card that you accept, they will put an influence mark on that particular region, but if you reject that offer, then they get points accordingly. So definitely a conundrum there, and a very cool mechanism. At number 15, I have Millefiori, so another one of his more recent designs. Lots of combos in this one with this pass and draft mechanism, trying to create networks and chains of actions to compound your points. At number 14, I have Through the Desert, another game considered as a classic, another route building style game as you're placing your camels on this desert, trying to spawn off them, reach these oases, collect these points tokens, as well as sectioning off pieces of the map to get those as points as well. Definitely a game where your opportunities are getting smaller and smaller with every single turn, and for everything you do there is an opportunity cost, which is what I really like about Through the Desert. At number 13, I have Ingenious. This one actually has some similarities to a game like Witchstone, where you're trying to get the same symbols in groups, but in this one it's a bit more simple and a bit more abstract in its nature, where you're trying to create kind of chains or straight lines of particular icons and get that many points in that particular colour. And when you place these tiles, and much like Yellow and Yangtze or Tigris and Euphrates, this has the same scoring system where your lowest value is your final score. Love that scoring mechanism. At number 12, I have Lost Cities. This is a 2-player only tug of war style game. This one, you are playing cards in either ascending or descending order, but whenever you commit to a new location, you are going to start with a points deficit. So you're going to start with negative 20 points, but as you start playing more and more colours, you're chipping away at that negative value and start gaining positive points. And you can even wager on yourself and get bigger multipliers, but that comes at a huge risk of costing you points at the end if you do not meet that threshold. I love the shared deck of cards where you want to hold on to cards that you know that your opponent wants. At number 11, I have Municipium. So this is another, definitely a forgotten gem in my opinion, an area control game, quite a subtle one, as you are trying to control these different regions and utilize and exploit the special abilities of these regions. And your actions or your options are actually very limited, where all you can do is you can move some meeples around, or you can play a card from this hidden deck, or play one of your personal cards. And it's all about getting the right timing, and I'm trying to strike when the iron's hot, and manipulate the board state to suit your own needs. Very nuanced, but very clever. At number 10, I have Zoo Vadis, or Quo Vadis, depending on which version you have. I've chosen the more recent one here. This is definitely unlike any other Knizia game that I've played, a negotiation style game, as you and your opponents are almost conversing, trying to strike deals to move along this map and reach this kind of star exhibit, collecting points as you go, but you can't really move without the blessing of other players, so you have to kind of promise things in the future. They scratch your back, you'll scratch theirs. And with the added abilities that the Zoo Vadis version comes with, I think it even enhances the gameplay, even if the theme is a little bit weird, but very fun experience, especially for higher player counts. That is Zoo Vadis. At number 9, I have Battle Line, another tug of war style game. In fact, this is one of the first games I ever had in my collection, as you are again trying to create kind of 3-card poker hands to claim these flags. Again, you are sharing a deck of cards, a bit like Lost Cities, where you know that you have cards that your opponent wants, and once your opponent commits to something, you might want to then play the card that you know they wanted. Quite a frustrating game, but the hand management is extremely clever, and a very tense game as well. So one of the best hand management games you'll find. That is Battle Line at number 9. At number 8, I have High Society, a small box filler auction style game, as you are bidding for these point scoring cards, as well as bidding not to take these negative cards. Very tight in terms of the money you have, but the cool thing about this game is the twist at the end, where if you are the player who spent the most money, you are automatically disqualified from winning. So again, you have to strike that balance of getting lots of points but not spending too much. At number 7, I have Marabunta. This is I think it's his newest 2-player game. This is a hybrid of an area control, an I Split You Choose game that uses dice actually. So you're rolling a cluster of dice, you're dividing them out, your opponent will choose which one, the cluster of dice they want, and then you end up ticking things off on this little area control board, or collecting goods, even increasing the yield of points that you'll get from each of these regions. And it's a really a game that puts you under a microscope really, in terms of making very tough decisions at all times, where you want to make the options very difficult for your opponents to make, and hopefully manipulate it just in the way so that you get what you want. Extremely clever. That is Marabunta. At number 6, one of my favourite, but yet still one of the lightest Knizia games, this is Rapido, also known as Escape. This is a push your luck style game. It's quite similar to a famous game called Can't Stop. But this one, you're rolling dice, you are trying to get doubles on the dice in order to climb up the staircase, or you can lock in high values on this separate staircase, and if you're remaining on that staircase, by the time it gets back round to your turn, then you'll move up a set amount of steps, but other people can kick you off. Very cool. One of my go-to filler games. I've played this one dozens and dozens of times. Everyone I've played it with loves it. That is Rapido at number 6. At number 5, I have Samurai. This one is another area control style game where you're trying to collect these different pieces by surrounding them with these tiles. Each of the pieces kind of assigns to a certain resource, or the tiles assigned to the goods you're collecting basically, and only contribute towards influence between those particular resources. But you have some cross-contamination where some of these pieces can be next to each other, and one tile can kind of influence both of them. Definitely have to manage your hand of tiles very carefully. Another game with a huge opportunity cost factor, in terms of if you go here, you're missing out on here. Very streamlined. The scoring's a little bit weird, but once you get your head around it, it's very interesting. So that is Samurai at number 5. At number 4, I have another one of his more recent games with Havalandi. This one seems to be a bit more polarizing, but it's a huge hit for me personally. This one, you are moving this hot air balloon around the perimeter of the board, placing your pieces on a particular row or line where that hot air balloon is coming off, and you're trying to kind of score different goals. You want to be next to these pavilions, you want to be creating networks, and launching these balloons based on different regions you're encroaching on, as well as trying to aim towards these end game objectives. I actually do like the way that some of the choices are taken out of your hand in this game, and you are a little bit tunnel vision based on where the hot air balloon has landed. I love it. That is Havalandi at number 4. At number 3, I have Chin. This is a tile placement game where you are trying to create groups of a certain colour in order to deploy these pagodas, and it's a race to shed your pagodas. And you can get rid of them even faster by creating bigger sections, or even encroaching onto these different cities and having the most of your pagodas touching the cities to get rid of them that way. Good back and forth. If you play something, you can undo your opponent's moves. I'm always creating opportunities for your opponents with whatever you place. Brilliantly refined, very sophisticated and streamlined gameplay. One of the best tile placement games out there. That is Chin at number 3. At number 2, I have Ra. So definitely one of the highest regarded Knizia games, and for good reason. It's my second favourite Knizia game. This one is another auction style game where you have fixed bids, so you cannot just bid what you want. You have 4 tokens at any time, and all you're doing is you are revealing these tokens or these tiles out in this kind of push your luck mechanism. And when it's your turn, you can either choose to reveal another tile, or you can choose to put a bid down, and then, or even sometimes you're forced to start a bid auction by revealing these Ra tiles. But it's all about utilising your bid tokens to the maximum kind of potency. Because, you know, if you reveal too many goods and you know that your opponent can outbid you, then they're going to do that. So you want to be making sure that, you know, even if you have weaker bid values than your opponent, you don't want to be making sure that, or you want to be making sure that you're getting a great value, but your opponent is not. And it's, again, a game with tons of layers, lots of wrinkles, definitely a deeper game than it first meets the eye, and it's one of the best auction games ever made. I think it might be my favourite. So that is Ra at number 2. And finally, at number 1, and my favourite Reiner Knizia game, is Babylonia. So this one, I think the people who love it really love it. I think everybody else maybe might not be aware of it. This is one of his root building style games, as you have a rack full of tiles. You're using them to create huge chains of your particular colour and trying to connect these different kind of cities together. And once these cities are surrounded, then a scoring will occur, and every matching symbol will trigger and score you points. But there's also kind of ongoing or permanent abilities you can acquire by surrounding these ziggurats. Lots of different scoring options that conflict with each other. Gameplay could not be more simple. Just simply place a tile, or 2 tiles, or more than that at times, onto the board and score accordingly. But wonderful game, one of the purest games I have in my collection, and one of my favourites, full stop. An absolute work of art. That is Babylonia at number 1. So there we have it. That is the top 25 games, but there were some other ones that narrowly missed out that I still do really like. You know, the recent Cascadito I really like. Cascadero was okay, but I prefer Cascadito. Botswana, also known as Wildlife Safari, is a good one. Kariba, Charte, Medici the dice game is very good. Armin Ray is a decent auction game. Taj Mahal, one that I could appreciate, but didn't quite work for me. You know, Well Riders was fine. Dragon Master was decent. Royal Visit, if you like the tug of war system, you might like this one. It didn't quite work for me. Same goes for Blue Moon Legends. Very interesting, well-designed game, but one that didn't quite suit my game style. Stevenson's Rocket, again, if you like these network building style games with some stocks and shares, you might like this one, but I did bounce hard off it. So yeah, just some different examples there as well. So hopefully you have enjoyed the video. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel, and check out my other content too. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.